Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video. Hey there, Rulers. Welcome back to Ruler School. This is DMO73, bringing you feature match coverage between myself playing a Jizo statue style ninja fusion Hanzo list. Very different than what other kinds of Hanzo lists you've seen. It was definitely geared towards a more casual style, but also wanted to just make use of some green cards that hadn't seen a lot of play recently. And I'm playing against Paul, who is playing his Chamimi Tribe kind of style beatdown deck. We kind of challenged each other a little bit in terms of you're going to see some things where, though I play Yokai Festival in my deck, I exclusively choose to only use it for Koga. I don't have access to Lorites. Paul has access to Lorite but doesn't have Lorite 7 Disciples. You know, things like that. And he wasn't able to use Karura. So like where I'm able to use Karura, he can't. And so there's some back and forth that comes along with that. So it just made for a really interesting matchup here, and I just kind of wanted to show it off. So I'm going to be on the draw going here into game 1. Getting that first stone, Wind Magic Stone. Out comes that Fairy of the Lost Isles. Going into my turn, calling that Ethereal Wind Magic Stone, and we'll use that Elemental Blast that I just drew off the top. 4 damage, just want to get that off the board, and then pass. So the Jizo deck, really its main win condition is making use of Huge Toad with Jiraiya. We talked about this in the Teacher's Lounge this week, how there are quite a few 1-drop instant speed runes, which make Jiraiya able to get Toads very large, very, very fast, and potentially just close out games all by themselves. Hitting that Magic Stone of Adventure, getting a Magic Stone of Bushido on my side, playing out that first Huge Toad. Just by itself, it's just a vanilla 4/4. Gotta wait till I get those Jiraiyas out. Very nice, though, to have like a Toad on board already and then cast a Jiraiya the following turn to then have 2 Toads. So the first Toad could maybe get advantageous boosts up pretty quickly. Casting that Explore the Unknown from Paul, getting to go dig the top 5, see if he gets a card there. Takes that Lorite, which is good. Can stop multiple different parts of Jiraiya, can stop getting the extra Toad, can stop the pump effect. Honestly, I think stopping the pump effect is probably more effective, just because it can pump up multiple Toads all at once. But stopping me from having multiple Toads on the field also is important. So just passing the turn there after hitting that Speaking Stone. Swinging in for 4. Says I'll flash in Viola. And here's where we get to an interesting interaction. So you cast the Viola, goes to block, and I say, well, okay, well, I'm going to table flip it. So this table flip would essentially mean that the 2 creatures are going to bounce off each other, but then Viola gets 8 damage from the table flip. So we're going to see kind of how this resolves. Paul's seeing how he wants to react potentially to the table flip, whether he wants to try to cancel it or something else. Chooses to pay 1 here. Tries to cast the Whirlwind Technique to give the Viola barrier. I have the Fairer spell for the Whirlwind Technique, so then what happens is, so this is an interesting little play that he does here. So the Fairer spell resolves, goes to the grave. The Elemental Blast is already in grave. Before the table flip resolves, he's going to banish the Viola to get it to then remove those 2 cards from the grave. Or sorry, he's going to let to remove those 2 cards in the grave, and then he's going to take the 4 damage from the Toad rather than have it be the trade bump. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. I mean, it's only 4 damage, and Fairer spell and Elemental Blast aren't terribly important for me to have in the graveyard. I think I would have just been okay with having it be, Viola was going to die anyway. So then, I essentially paid 2 cards to deal with 1 card, and he still didn't take any damage. This way at least got some damage out of it, though. Plays Lemuria, who is going to get him 4 boomerang counters. This lets her pump herself up, or she can burn 2 counters to destroy a Resonator. Super great having that spot removal in green. Paying 3. In comes the Jiraiya. Jiraiya's going to attempt to go get me another huge Toad. is looking at and saying, do I want to let that resolve? Do I want to let you get another huge toad, potentially set up a big play, or do I want to focus on stopping the extra toad here? He does decide to cast the Lorite, which I think in this situation with what the board state is, knowing that he has Lemuria is the better call for him to make. Lemuria herself will be able to deal with a lot of stuff, and he can even throw... He could throw the Lemuria underneath it. It's a little risky for him specifically right now because a table flip would mean that the toad would get to trade up into Lemuria. Because again, with table flip or bullet ball or any of the runes now in my rune deck, though that one toad can get very, very large very, very quickly. Especially considering how we're playing the rapid fire me sandstorm combo. So that's like 8 plus, you're board wiping them for 6 plus then immediately pumping up your toad +8 +8 to being a 12/12. So you can get a lot of damage very quickly. Seeing that 5th stone, using Lemuria's effect here to try to kill the Jiraiya. I say, well, we'll go ahead and Whirlwind technique to try to save it. And then he says, you know what, I really don't want that Jiraiya to stick on board, which is absolutely the right call. So in response to the Whirlwind technique, he's going to go ahead and use the other 2 counters for Lemuria and get that Jiraiya off the board. Works for me. He paid 4 will and 0 cards to make me spend 2 cards, essentially. And now he does have a blocker, at least to be able to deal with the huge toad. Sure, I have to try to stick another Jiraiya to make it bigger, but, table flip still lets me trade up into it, but I have to have a table flip in order to get through Lemuria at this point. Do happen to have another Jiraiya in hand, so we're finally going to get to go see one of those toads come out. So now we're sitting on 2 toads. And we're still setting ourselves up to be able to do a big, sandstorm combo play. Of course, I don't want to get too greedy because I am playing against Wind, so he could just have the rapid fire me combo to come back at me. So I have to be a little bit smart. Swinging for 4, he casts blocks with the Lemuria. See, I have another Jiraiya in hand there. Debating whether or not I want to use the table flip right now. Ultimately say, yeah, you know what, let's go ahead and do it. Cast the table flip, which will let me attempt to pump up the toads. Before that resolves, though, he's going to go ahead and use that magic boomerang. Oh, no, he did let it resolve on accident, so that was a little bit of a misplay here. He let the table flip resolve, which means now it's an 8/8. So he's going to pump up his Lemuria to be a 16. So it will still, technically in this moment, it should still die. So in response to even that, I'm going to use the bullet ball. So I have an 8/8. So I have an 8/8 that plays out a little bit differently. So I have an 8/8 toad here. Attempting to cast the bullet ball to sacrifice the other toad. It should still only hit for 8 damage. And then I'm not sure if the life total here would actually, like the Lemuria I think would still be alive. And then it would take the block. That might be wrong. Either way, I think we played it whereas the bullet ball wasn't able to kill it. And then we were able to push through for that 12 damage with the other toad. So he's going to cast that rapid fire me. Say, you know what, we're going to cancel that. I don't want to have my guy die. And in just casting the rapid fire me, now that toad is now an 8/8 for the turn. So even if he had something to back it up, I could still survive the rapid fire me play. But he does have, in response to the Sealing Scroll, a magic boomerang. So he does get to kill that toad. Ultimately leaves the Jiraiya on the field. But Jiraiya by himself, sure, he's a generic 7/7, but he really gets the most value when those other toads are out on the field. And at this point in time, 2 of my toads are gone. So I have to try to get some more. Debating whether or not he wants to play a card on his turn or wait until my turn, with only 4 will available. decides to just go ahead and pass the turn, which I think is the smart play, knowing that he has Viola. I think those Kogas in his hand probably aren't going to do him much good in this matchup, ultimately, unless he can get to a pretty high light. If he has a Jupiter in hand, then eventually Koga can get to that point where Jupiter can just cycle infinitely, which would be good, but he does have, looks like a Viola plus a Winds of Vitality. Get it to 7 will here, and I say, you know what, I'm not going to play the other, I'm not going to play down the other Toads right now. I want to make use of this Yokai Festival while I can. We'll throw out a couple Karuras. Ultimately, this is really risky for a couple reasons. Karura herself can't be canceled, but stealing her out with the Yokai Festival can be canceled. And I was walking into a green deck with 2 unknown runes, probably one of them being Sandstorm. Well, at this point in time, one of them being Sandstorm and the other one being a very safe bet that it's the Master Rune for Chamimi. But pulling out the 2 Karuras there was kind of threatening him to say, hey, well, you should probably try to play your elephants now, at which point in time, you know, these Karuras are going to be able to deal with you. Plus, at this point in time, with 2 Karuras, him being at 24 life, this is threatening him lethal. So, like, he has to get some flying on the board right now, or otherwise he's going to die. Paying 5. There's that Elephant Master Rune. So out comes those 3 10/10 Elephant tokens. Does have that Viola in hand, so he'll be able to give one of those elephants flying, which is good, unless I get into a fairer spell. There's a table flip, which is nice for me. At this point in time, we're gonna go Sandstorm. And this is probably, this playline, if I'm correct in what I'm trying to do here, this is probably the one playline that Hanzo has in terms of an out to elephants, and that's to do this the same turn that the elephants flip. He's going to remove some of my cards with the Viola before it dies to the Rapid Fire me. And that play is to Sandstorm, Snipe Away me, pay 4 to Judgment Hanzo, flip back down the Snipe Away me, and the Rapid Fire me, and then cast Rapid Fire me again, thus dealing 10 damage to the board. Ultimately, he does have the Viola still, so he'll be able to make one of them flying, but still, that'll just result in a trade, and we'll be in much better shape. So hang that second Rapid Fire me to try to do the extra 4 damage. He casts in the Viola to pump one of them up. The other ones die. So, yeah. Okay, well, we'll swing in for 12 if you want to trade. That's fine with me. Swing in for another 12. That's safe. Take you down to 12 life. Again, kind of constantly pushing that pressure with those Karuras, saying, well, now you have to answer it, and you lost your Master Rune. And now you're dealing with a blocker who can keep Karura safe, and then a flying 12/12 that you have to be able to answer the following turn. I am right. The last one he has in there is Sandstorm. Ultimately not going to do much against this board state. Calls a stone. Unfortunately, we bumped the camera here, but don't notice it. I apologize for the shakiness. This is going to result in this being like this for the rest of the match, but thankfully you will be able to at least see all the cards. So playing the Viola here to give the other Viola flying, and then he's going to pump it up with Winds of Vitality to be able to kill it here. So there is a little bit of a misplay in the math here. That Viola shouldn't be dead, because Karura is a 12/12. And that Viola should be a 14/14. Neither of us catch it in the moment. Probably has a potential big impact on the outcome of this match. But plays the Chamimi Shield Warrior. Kind of just loading up this field as much as possible to deal with the Hanzo here. Plays that Karura, that Village of the Koga. Ultimately, I'm still in good shape. Like, he hasn't done any damage to me. Been able to keep his board clear, so even if he flips at Chamimi right now, there's not a ton of pressure on board. I'm swinging in for 10. paying, looks like 5 here to play a Kikyu, or Ririkyu. So this is the Tea Master, one of the cards that we talked about on the Teacher's Lounge. So I get to look at the top 5 cards in my deck, grab a 3-drop, and then put it into play, or it's the top 3 cards of your deck, sorry, and put a 3-drop among them into play, 3-drop or less, and then anytime a Wind Resonator enters the board, you get a token, and I can use that Kotaro then to produce green, so now I have access to a free floating green to make use of this table flip in my hand, just in case he tries to punish the swing with the Hanzo. Swinging with 10 for Hanzo, he's like, nah, it's fine, I'll block with Viola. I'm like, okay, at that point in time, I don't mind. Deciding whether or not I want to do something else with that 1 extra green. I say, you know what, let's get a little risky. We'll play this Jizo statue. Not that it's going to get me anywhere. It's mainly just to put an extra wind T counter onto the Ririkyu, because if it gets to 3 counters when it dies, 1, it's an 11-12, so it's a good stat line by itself. But 2, if it gets to 3 counters when it dies, I get to draw a card. So it's another way for Wind to be able to kind of recoup its hand, which is something that Wind's not very good at doing right now. So Paul, once again, at least in this board state, staring down a pretty dangerous board. Decides to cast the Sandstorm here. At least puts 2 damage on the board for everybody. And paying 5 to do Judgment. There's really no reason not to at least do the Sandstorm. The Shield Warrior now is, I believe, an 8-10. Or maybe it's a 10-10. It's going to swing into the Hanzo here. Oh, it got pumped during the upkeep as well. So kills the Hanzo, and I say, you know what, that's fine, I don't mind. Plays the Fairy here as his backup card. So the hard punish, if I was being smart, rather than playing that Jizo statues, would have been to leave the 1 will open to have for a table flip in case something tried to swing into the Hanzo to keep it protected. Ultimately, though, in allowing him to swing at it, I've done what I needed to do anyway, which is to get rid of a blocker. So at this point in time, I have 2 attackers and 2 blockers. His attackers are huge. His blockers are big, but he'd have to throw... So the Ririkyu will kill either of them. If he throws the Fairy under the bus, the Ririkyu won't die. If he throws the Chamimi under the bus, which he won't, the Chamimi will die, and the Ririkyu won't. And then he won't have the pump anymore. That meaning Kotaro can then swing in and put a lot of pressure. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable here, even though Chamimi is flipped. Playing that Jiraiya into a Toad, which gets me 2 more T counters for Ririkyu. I say, let's go in for 11 damage. Let's see what you got. See if you want to go down to 1 life, or if you want to throw that Fairy under the bus. Says, okay, I'll block it with the Fairy. That's fine, I don't mind. Kotaro swinging in for 6. Blocks with the Chamimi. Ultimately, there wasn't really a point for me to be swinging in with the Kotaro right here, specifically because Table Flip can't answer J-Rulers. I don't really know what my goal was there in swinging with the Kotaro rather than just leaving it up for a block. You see, I do have access to Bullet Ball Thunderclap. Maybe my thought was, if I can chip through that 6, if he says, sure, that's fine, I'll take the 6 and crack back, then I could use the Bullet Ball Thunderclap to just immediately kill him. Maybe that was my idea, to try to kind of cheat it out. Ultimately, though, I'm still feeling pretty good. Those Jizos will come online soon. It's just being able to kind of kill him, ultimately. So I have to wait another 3 turns. So back and forth, 1 more of my own, so 2 more of my own turns, and the game's on a clock for lethal with that Jizo statue just kind of sitting there as a time bomb. So ultimately my goal is just to kind of stall us out. So he goes to pump up the knight, and then in response to doing the pump, I'm going to go ahead and cast the table flip, essentially just putting a cloud on him, and also wanting to make the Toad an 8/8 for the turn. Not having any resonators in his hand, he's got a Winds of Vitality and a Koga. Unfortunately, doesn't really do much for him right now. Just the fact that I have 3 resonators to his 2 essentially means that this is lethal regardless. All I would have to do is connect with even just the 4/4 Toad, and then I can, you know, Jizo statues the rest of everything out of the way. Decides to go ahead and just pass there, which I think is the safest option. Ultimately, having the bullet ball in hand, like I said, leads to just the situation being pretty much over. Keeping the resonators off board has done well. I even forget to put a counter onto the Jizo statues here. Ultimately, though, not really mattering. Oh, then I catch it. So, swinging with the Hanzo. Or sorry, the Jiraiya. Main reason to swing in with the Jiraiya is because I know that there's access to the table flip, so when he goes to block it, I can just say, okay, well, we'll table flip then, make it so that it becomes a kind of trade up, and I get to pump up the, that's the wrong card, being Rikyu, table flip to pump up into the Toad. So with the table flip plus the 7 from Jiraiya, the Shield Warrior would die, because it'd be taking 15 damage, excuse me. Paul deciding here to burn a lot of resources here to pump up the Shield Warrior to being a 16-16, or having 16 defense essentially, so it will survive the table flip combination and kind of the bounce off each other. Ultimately, I'm fine with that. The Toad's going to spring in for 8. Blocks with the with the Chamimi. That's fine with me. Again, I just need the Rikyu to connect. Literally, any of these things need to connect, and then Bullet Ball finishes it off. Swing with Rikyu. Asking him if he has anything. Doesn't, so he takes it and goes down to 1, I believe. Nothing really much here to be able to block with or stop it. His hand is Winds of Vitality Koga, unfortunately. Take him down to 100. And then I say to myself, do I cast a Bullet Ball this turn, or do I wait until his turn, my turn, or wait till his turn? There's really no reason for me not to do it, at least do it on my turn. Maybe the thought is to see what he tries to do during his upkeep, wait till he maybe tries to tap himself out a little bit more to make use of it. So I say pass the turn, and then decide to say before draw on his turn. We'll pay 4 and do the Awakening of the Bullet Ball in hand on the Rikyu, which would then trigger Rikyu, let me draw a card and gain 12 or 16 life, taking up to 56. And then because it's awakened, I'll just shoot his resonator, and then he'll take the 1100 damage from that, and that would be lethal. So we're kind of checking to make sure that Bullet Ball doesn't like require it to be barriered or anything. It just deals it to both targets. So even if he makes the resonator have barrier because I awakened it, it also deals damage to your opponent. It's like to your opponent, that resonator and your opponent. So that is lethal, and we'll move on to game 2. As we go into the next game, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell down below so you're notified when all of our videos goes live, and consider supporting the channel by being a member here on YouTube or by checking it out on Patreon for all the cool exclusive perks that come with supporting us. Thank you guys so much. Let's go to the next game. So moving into game 2 here, I am as well on the draw again, hoping to have a pretty similar start. Maybe I can even land some Toads a little bit earlier to push that pressure in. Right off the gate, we're casting that Explore the Unknown, wanting to dig into some good stuff. You see there's that Jupiter there, a Lorite. Lorite is a great option to have. Again, did slow down the tempo of the decks pretty significantly, at least in the early game, because this deck can get pretty explosive based on its opener. Playing that Fairy turn 1 and then saying pass. Having an Elemental Blast again, even hitting the same first stone, Ethereal. Second Speaking Stone coming down here. Says I'm going to go ahead and play the Chamimi Explorer, so we get to look at the top 4 and put a Chamimi Tribe into hand. Oh, it's the top 3. Sees the Shield Warrior there. So, having a much more tempo-oriented start, I'm going to go ahead and cast the Jiraiya while he's topped out. Say, let's go ahead and get that Toad out there. Calls that third Speaking Stone. Swing in for, I believe, 4 with the Explorer. See, that's fine. I'll take it. Go down to 36. And then just choosing the pass. So having the Viola in hand, pretty clear here. Trying to see if he can maybe bait something out or kill something in response to me swinging. Swinging in for 7 with the Jiraiya first. See the Viola flash in. Gonna go ahead and try to pump it up. I do have a table flip in hand. I'm debating whether or not I want to use it now. Just go in to commit to the block. Down comes the table flip. He has the Ferris spell in hand. I have a Ruin Story to stop the Ferris spell. So he's going to go ahead and do the same thing he did before, which I think is, again, still a questionable play here in terms of stopping the damage. Before the table flip actually, like, they deal damage to one another, he's going to go ahead and say, okay, well, I'll banish the Viola then to remove 2 of those cards from your graveyard, the Elemental Blast and the table flip, and then I'll just take the 7 from the swing. And then he gets to take another 8. Would be taking another 8, but I decided to kill the other Chamimi Tribe. Main reason why I'm doing this is because in this matchup, having more creatures is definitely better, because the longer I keep... the more Resonators I let him keep on board with Chamimi, the more devastating the Chamimi flip becomes. And I do get pretty hard punished here. He plays the 4-drop Chamimi that if he controls a Chamimi gains Swiftness and can attack a Resonators. It's also 1500 attack, and can just kill Jiraiya outright. So I immediately have to try to find a way to deal with that guy. Playing a McKay here. If I let that guy stay on board, it is definitely a very bad time for me. 1500 attack is an absolutely huge amount. Do an Elemental Blast to deal 7 to him because I've torrented with it. Keep in mind how many cards I have to spend to try to answer this card. Swing Toad at him for 4. Take him down to 29. Burn McKay, and then burn Sandstorm to be able to deal enough damage to get that guy off the board, ultimately having to spend 3 cards to answer that 1 card. So pretty good waste of my resources there. Also, stealing Sandstorm is very, very helpful for him because now I don't have access to be able to do that immediate turn after board wipe of the elephants, so the elephants can become a much better pressure. Speaking of, he's going to just cast it right now and say, you're way far behind, you don't have a way to react to this, let's put some 10-10s on board, you're not going to be able to wipe them after just spending all those resources, and we're going to threaten some serious damage. Going into my turn, I pretty much then have to commit to a kick you play. start to think about it, ultimately I think it is the best option here, because it does give me a way to gain life. The KQ can stop one of the, it is bigger than one of the elephants, potentially gives me a Jiraiya, which can get me another toad. So River Q coming down here, getting a look at the top cards. I do see the Jiraiya, so the Jiraiya gets me to go get another toad. Ultimately, probably the most ideal thing. Say you're gonna pay 5 to put 3 resonators on board. I'm gonna pay 5 to put 3 resonators on board, and one of mine is bigger than yours. Now I have those 2 T counters, so if I block one of them, then and he tries to swing the other one into it for some reason or pump it up, then I can at least gain the life that comes with it, and I will have made him burn a card. He's gonna pay 1 here to do the rapid fire. Ultimately, I have to say no. I have to stop that from happening. Now my toads are 8/8. He has the Lorite to cancel the pump effect, which is a really good thing for him. So now they're just 4/4s. Swings in for 10. I see that's fine. I'm not going to stop it. Go down to 26. Swing in for 10. Say that's fine. I'll take it. Go down to 16. And that was a big misplay for me, because I know he's playing green and I know he's playing Viola. So he just pumps the other one up to being a 12/12 flyer, and then has a Winds of Vitality to be able to pump it up the rest of the way for lethal. So a quick snap back from Paul, and we move into game 3. So this time around, I'm going to be on the play, finally getting to take a chance for that Hanzo list to go on the play and see what we can do with it. Chipping just 1. Seeing that Elemental Blast, which we saw before. Looks like a table flip, a toad, which is great for that early aggression. Saying, okay, there we go. First turn toad. Let's just push some pressure right back on you. Plays that fairy. Passes the turn to me. I remember when we were playing this, Paul says, do you have the Elemental Blast like always? And the answer is yes. So killing the fairy, unless he decides to burn a pump spell on it. He says, no, that's fine. I'll go ahead and let it die, and then I get to swing in for the 4 damage, take it down to 36. Explore the Unknown. I'm going to say no. I'm feeling a lot of pressure right now, so we're going to go ahead and say no to that. He does decide to use the Snipe Away Me, and I say that's fine. I don't want you to have any more cards in your hand as I can. Does use the Energize to play the Explorers, who gets to dig. Sees a Lemuria, which is pretty great for him. Playing a McKay on my turn. Passing the turn there, uses Sandstorm. I say in response, well, McKay's going to die anyway, so let's go ahead and get that Chamimi Tribe off the board. Swings in for that damage. Should I say no? We'll table flip to keep that off the board too. Does decide to play the Lemuria, which puts him in a pretty good position here. So having the Lemuria against a non-established board means that any Resonator I play here is at risk of getting killed. Thankfully, though, I do have that Ruined Sword to be able to make him sacrifice it. But again, I'm not really establishing any pressure here. The longer the game goes, the better it actually gets for him when the boards are clear, because he can produce bigger guys faster, and then eventually if we get to this trade war where we both used our board wipes styles of stuff, his stuff just becomes too big for me to be able to board wipe, and he just comes back, especially since he is playing the Jupiters to be able to double swing, bounce blockers out of the way, do all kinds of crazy stuff. So played the Guitar at the end of his turn, just so we both have a Resonator. See, I do have that Ferris spell and a Jiraiya. So I say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and play Jiraiya out here, risking a potential low right play. He does have it. I say, no, I'll have a Ferris spell to stop it. So I can't play the other Toad that's in my hand at this point, like I maybe would have wanted to, playing Jiraiya and then Toad while having one will open to back it up. At this point in time, I just have the one will to be able to support it, so it's a little bit riskier if I want to play that second Toad. I do have, especially knowing that I have a table flip to be able to protect what I have on board. Swinging for 6. Says I'll block it. At this point in time, it's a debate of whether or not to just let it be a trade. I say, that's fine, I don't have anything. And he says, well, then I'll pump it. And I say, okay, well, then at that point in time, I'll table flip it. Because now that you've burned an extra card, I don't want to have to worry about having my guy die and yours not. I want to keep applying that pressure right back to you. Swing in for 7. Or sorry, 6 with Kotaro, taking him down to 30. Out comes the Toad. So now I have the, a pretty established board, a potential even lethal next turn, and a lot of will to be able to punish anything he tries to play, which makes me feel very confident in this position on the board state. Like I said before in the Teacher's Lounge, a single Hanzo and a couple Toads can close out the game pretty quick. Tries to flash in that Jupiter at end of turn. Ultimately a pretty smart move, I think, but I did happen to have the Ruin Star to be able to stop it. Bouncing back to Jiraiya would have been pretty awesome and letting him draw a card, forcing me to reestablish. Does decide to pay 5 here to play the elephants because he pretty much has to. The sad part being that I am at a grand total of 6 will. So at the end of this next turn, I'm going to board wipe him back. So going into my turn, during the upkeep, we'll cast the Whirlwind technique because we want to keep Jiraiya safe for the rest of the turn. This will then allow him to pump up both of these Toads. So now these Toads are currently sitting at 8/8. Says that's fine. We go to recover. Cast the Sandstorm. The Sandstorm will do 2 damage to all of them. Now suddenly both of those Toads are 12/12s. Here comes the Rapid Fire Me. Now those Toads are both 16/16s. Then we'll perform Judgment with Hanzo. Like I said, really the only time where I could capitalize on this is the turn after he plays the elephants. We flip over the Snipe Away Me, cast it again, there's another 10 damage. He can potentially save 1 if he's got Winds of Vitality in his hand, but ultimately both of those Toads are swinging for 20. So if even one of them gets to connect, the other 2 Resonators would be lethal. So ultimately, Paul admits that he wasn't able to do anything, and that will close out the match. So very quick games 2 and game 3, but a very solid back and forth during game 1. So I hope you guys enjoyed this match. Sorry for the crooked angle. We'll fix that for next time. The deck profiles of both of these lists will be up later this weekend, so be sure to tune back in for those. Consider supporting the channel with that join button or those links down below. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.